who are joining us tonight. And again, I apologize that our screen share is not working for our presentation, and I hesitate to try it once more because we were failing before. But and welcome to some of you new folks who are joining us as well. I see there's a lot of shy people who don't want to show their faces, and that's fine, no problem at all. But you know, we're going to go through kind of a presentation pretty quickly here, and then let me admit a couple more people here. There we go. Okay, and so we'll go through this presentation, and again, I apologize for no PowerPoint, but we're going to leave plenty of time for discussion at the end of this, because I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to generate some questions and ideas and whatever. But as you know, we chose to have it on this date because we want to honor not only our loved ones who've suffered in these long-term care centers, but also just to acknowledge and be aware that the World Elder Abuse Day recognition is today. And it's pretty interesting that we have this Awareness Day now, and it coincides with this pandemic that's turning our world upside down. And when you look at the definition of elder abuse in the Organization for the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, their definition includes neglect or isolation. That's number one. Second is physical abuse. Third is sexual abuse. Fourth is financial abuse and exploitation. And the last is emotional or psychological abuse. Well, we're seeing this in spades right now with COVID. We're seeing isolation, which was the number one definition, and we're seeing emotional and psychological abuse going on. So it's something we've got to deal with. We've been dealing with it. Elder Voice has been very active on the legislative front because many issues are being brought forward that are impacting our licensure, for one thing, and impacting the care that's being given. We're all painfully aware of the care issues that are happening. And we are working with the Department of Health and trying to get some improvements for all of this. Before we get into all this, I really want to thank all of you, because everything that we have accomplished so far in our short 3-year history is because of you all. You came to the hearings, you came and you talked to your legislators, you came to rallies, you've been to our meetings, and you are advocating with your family and friends. And because of all of your activity and your support and your willingness to tell about what's happening in your family with your loved one and go public, that has really made the difference for us. Elder Voice has become a very powerful voice in the legislature, in the public policy arena. Gina and I were talking to an industry person who said he was at a conference. I believe it was, I don't know if it was this winter or not, but fairly recently. And we were in the same room, we being a group of Elder Voice folks, we were in the same room, and another industry person points over at us and says, "They're the ones I'm afraid of." And that's a good thing, as long as we handle it respectfully. put it that way. I think in this time we've been able to earn a lot of trust with the media, and that is has been a very powerful voice for us. Uh, Several of you have actually talked to media people. You've done interviews. You've told your story that got reported. And because of all that activity, it really brought elder voice in the forefront. And we were finally able to get the seriousness of this issue up front and center. As a result, I'm not going to go into our whole history, but we've been able to, year after year, continue to build our coalition and be building our relationships with the legislators and regulators in industry. And we're the unique group out of all of the advocate groups who really are solely focused on the well-being of the resident. That's our only focus. Nothing else matters. We are not taking money from the industry. We are willing to take strong positions if they're needed. We take them respectfully, but there are times when you just have to be strong and make that point. And we're the only ones, especially this year, and I'll tell you a little more about that, we're the only ones who are really starting to do that role. And we're finding others that, for whatever their reasons, are reluctant to be as what we would consider as strong advocates as you should be. I really miss that you're not being able to see this next slide, because it's a slide that we got off of the website. It was public, and it was a video that the care providers had done. And a group of them were flashing dollar bills and singing to the tune of Do Re Mi. And but the theme was bring in the dough. We've got to get, for their PAC money, for their political action committee. And what's so important about that is it demonstrates a true David and Goliath situation. The industry's well-funded, has been here for a long time, developed strong relationships, and with the legislature, with the Department of Health. So those are things that we're still moving up that hill to try to address that and make sure that the needs of those residents and families are being heard as loudly as we could. And then, as we know, we were all delighted that we got the elder care reform legislation passed last year. The governor signed that bill. It was an awesome day. Our lobbyist friends from AARP and Legal Aid said until Elder Voice came around, they just couldn't get anybody to listen. And again, because you all came forward and you listened and you told your stories, they listened. So I thank you again, all of you. And again, I wanted to take a moment, and again, I'm sorry you don't see my slide because I've got some cool pictures of Susie Scheller and Elan Caspi. These two have been literally with us right from day one. Actually, Susie started us, as many of you already know. And she is now our legal advisor in a formal manner. The work she's doing for us this year, the legislature, is phenomenal. She understands the needs and the issues for the residents and their families, and she knows how to duck and weave through the law. And she's been writing legislation. Matter of fact, she is responsible for drafting a major piece of legislation that we are introducing this year um, uh, just elder voice. So hopefully we'll get others that'll jump in and join us. But hold on, I need to admit a couple more people here. But so it's just, and the respect she's earned with the legislators, with our other industry folks, is enormously helpful to us. And the time and energy she's taking away from her private practice to help us, I think we just can't tell her enough how eternally grateful we are. And then Elon, as many of you know, he's our go-to expert. Anytime we have a question about what's the impact of a particular issue or concern, and what can we do to better address these concerns. I mean, we sometimes have days where we're emailing back and forth several times, and he's always there to give us detailed responses and understanding that we wouldn't have had before. And so I thank you very much, both of you. I wish it wouldn't have to be remote like this, but it is what it is. But let me just go into, we had our regular session, which ended in May. Very, the strangest legislative session I've ever experienced. And because it's all often tough anyway, because the legislature often goes behind closed doors and does its negotiating and bargaining. But during this, it's become very, apparent. So we participate in hearings by Zoom meetings. We have never been given the opportunity to testify, even when we ask. So the opportunity for giving input it's tough. It's very tough. But we had two pieces of legislation that were very, threatening, and you probably, most of you know. The Department of Health has been asking that we delay the legislation or the licensure of assisted living. And that we totally understand the demands that they're under. I mean, they have gone through hell and back, I think, handling this pandemic. But we just cannot be okay with letting them delay that another year. If we had had assisted living licensure in place now, we would be seeing far fewer incidents and deaths and suffering than what we are now, because there would have been care standards in place, there would have been infection control standards in place. So you know, we just, as much as we empathize with them, we're asking them to find a way. The other is the industry came forward with a request to give them blanket legal immunity during the pandemic. Well, nearly all of our protections have been stripped away during this pandemic, and that would take the last pillar of you know, responsibility or accountability. And because we can't visit our loved ones, so we aren't there physically to see what's going on, what's happening. And the ombudsman and the Office of Health Facilities complaints aren't allowed to go in. So there's really none of the typical legislative oversight. But because I sent a plea out, a bunch of you sent your emails into the legislators sitting on those committees, and I think it was queued up to probably do a fairly fast run through. But because of all of those emails that you all sent and others, they knew this was a hot potato, so they couldn't just slam it through. So it killed it for the regular session. As you all know, we've now entered the special session, which is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But one of the things that we have going is that we are introducing, we being Elder Voice, are introducing legislation. Senator Scott Dibble has been instrumental in helping us get this going. And I'll just turn it over to Susie, because Susie is the brain trust behind this piece of legislation, and I'm very excited for many aspects of it. You know, how good our prospects are, I'm not sure yet. But Susie, let me turn it over to you and let you give the folks a feel for what that's talking about.
This is Steve helping out on some of the tech stuff. Susie, you'll be muted, so you'll need to unmute yourself, or if you aren't able to do that, just let me know which phone number you're on and I can unmute for you. You may need to send a message in the text box to let me know which phone number to unmute. Well, I'll just unmute everybody, I guess, for the moment, and then everybody else can mute back up, I guess.
Let's see here, where trying to find Susie's phone number on here. I'm quite sure she's on. Well, maybe let's we'll track Susie down, and let's go on to. Did you get Susie here? Yeah. Okay. No? Okay. Let's just go on and ask Jean if she would come up and come online here and talk about our loved ones really dying of loneliness and some of the activities that we're trying to pursue there and to address that. Jean, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Chris. And everyone, Chris, besides Susie and Alon, Chris is unbelievable hours, and we wouldn't be where we're at today, Chris, without you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Let's talk about visiting, or the lack of visiting that has been going on within our loved ones' facilities. And I will tell you that I believe the core of this started because we have, especially in assisted living and memory care, no real strong infection control policies. This is nationwide, but especially here in Minnesota, where we have no licensing of the assisted living and memory care facilities. Infection control is one of the things that we're working on in our Elder Voice bill. So I believe everything starts from there. When you think about it, they're trying to control infection coming in, and the panic mode sets in. We need to protect our loved ones, so we'll lock them away from the outside and the community. While this is going on, the hospitals are trying to build up their personal protective equipment, and the last thing to be thought of is the long-term care facilities. It was, that was neglect on the part of the planning as this was going on. And now here we are 3 months later, and we're now just starting to catch up. we still are hearing of facilities that don't have enough PPE, especially in the assisted living and memory care, where most of people pay for the care and the home themselves. The federal government isn't supplying the testing or the PPE in most cases. So I will fast forward to what we are doing now as Elder Voice with anticipation that this terrible psychological trauma that has happened to the people in memory care and assisted living and the families at home that haven't been able to visit their loved one. We want to prepare our members and other families with a strong infection control, the best they can format of our own. And together with Nancy Hogan, who's another nurse leader within Elder Voice, we're developing a protocol. And Elder Voice, hopefully by the end of the week, will be able to supply to people for a cost and hopefully a little tiny bit of a fundraiser, face masks, gloves, and the spit screen. If you know, the spit screens go around the head and they're perfectly clear. There's some studies that are coming out that show that the spit screens might even be better than a mask because they're so solid, they're not breathable. And especially for our loved ones that are in memory care, this may be a good piece of protective equipment. So you can look for that on our website, eldervoicefamilyadvocates.org. You'll see updates, but we believe that we need to best prepare family members who want to go in to visit their loved ones with as much protection as we can as they begin this process, because family members too are a little afraid of either spreading or contracting the virus themselves. So we're very much aware of that. Just today, the ombudsman came out. Chris, is that going to be shown, or should I just mention it?
We'll post it, but no, I'm sorry, can't get on the.
Okay, no worries, but I'll just let everybody know today the ombudsman came out with visitor guidelines for window visits. And some of you may know that each facility has been doing their own thing, and we've heard from families who have called who've said that they are not even allowed window visits with the windows closed and a cell phone on the other side. So that's not good. So the ombudsman just put out a protocol today, which actually allows the windows to be open if everybody maintains their distance and, fresh air. That's good. So look to Elder Voice website for further information and ordering information of these little packets that we're going to put together. Help our members and help raise a little bit of money for Elder Voice.
Thank you, Jean. I still haven't been able to track down Susie, and I know she was trying to get in. So
Susie is now available on the meeting, so I can ask her to unmute if she would like to say something.
What?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Chris, were you not able to get the PowerPoint up? Was that also what I was hearing?
I'm sorry. No, we could not get it up. So sorry, you're going to have to talk through all the points. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I actually thought I might be able to share my screen to do that if you wanted me to try. But
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to give it one try, but not delay too much further. If I don't get it, I will just simply talk. I appreciate all of you joining. Well, I'm disabled on the sharing, so that's okay. I'm not the host. But I appreciate all of you being on the line on this very important day, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And so important what all of you are doing, and just the support of Elder Voice Family Advocates and the support of residents and clients in the facilities. It's just incredible work, and I'm heartened. I'm I'm heartened by the efforts and the response. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, or just to make you aware of, is the currently introduced legislation in the special session and how we entered the regular session. Chris, is that a place to start here?
Yeah, I just finished off the regular session and just stated that we have now our Senate bill and our House bill, and let you take over for describing what's in those.
Certainly. Well, I'll go to the immunity protection first, which Chris would have likely said that thankful for your support. That did not go through during regular session. Immunity meaning allowing providers, hospitals and long-term care providers to be immune from civil and administrative liability for any actions or omissions during the emergency peacetime order. And so we have not seen that introduced in special session. You never know what happens, but in terms of special session, we believe that we have not seen that, and there is some significant opposition from both parties on that piece of legislation. And the thing that I just want to make people aware of is the rationale for that provision was stated as encouraging physicians and nurses to come to Minnesota and help us out with COVID. And we certainly all need good quality help and care. But we don't believe the bill does that. And we're hearing some things from other states who have passed it, that it does not protect their nurses, for instance, and it does not protect their employees when there has been concerns in the workplace setting related to COVID. And our law currently allows for a shifting standard of care, which is what we're experiencing right now. So that's all on the immunity. I will go to Senate File 60, House File 99, which is a brand new number today. And these are drafted by Senator Dibble and Representative Cleaborn related to recommendations of Elder Voice Family Advocates as to two sort of main issues: what to address when there has been discussion of assisted living license delay, even though we're opposing it, and how do we look at the COVID-19 protections. So the bill has been a combined effort to have in mind things that are necessary regardless of what happens with assisted living licensure delay, as well as necessary COVID-19 protections. So there are a few general, I'm going to summarize what some of these protections are. There's a tweak to electronic monitoring, which it is our intention to remove the provision that is currently under the Minnesota Department of Health forms for the representative and the roommate representative to need to attach a statement from a medical provider that the resident or client lacked understanding of camera placement. We don't believe it was the intent to provide a medical record attached to a notice of the placement of a camera stating that a provider has had a specific conversation about their understanding about camera placement and the resident does not understand that. We believe that that is goes outside of the bounds of the intent of the law. These are the very people we're intending to protect, those who are most vulnerable and cannot verbalize what has happened to them. And so we're looking at a tweak in the law that says the representative can attest that there is a medical provider who has stated they lack understanding, rather than having the medical provider provide a statement that they lack understanding for camera placement. We see this as important. And so there's a two-part to that. One, change the law to the attestation of the representative, and then two, ask MDH to remove the requirement of the attachment for the representative form. There's also a desire to have a short list, a very short list of cameras that do not require significant installation that could be delivered to the facility and a staff member put in the residence room. Given we've fought hard for this right, but during COVID, we haven't been able to get in to put the camera in. And so we are asking for a short list of approved simple devices, an Amazon Echo or similar device that could simply be placed in the room. We are continuing to be on track with assisted living license directors. So our bill asks actually that even be moved up, that assisted living directors be licensed. We think that's an important consumer protection, even if licensure isn't in existence for that organization, to provide some guidance and regulatory help to the directors of the assisted living. So that is on track, in fact, moved up a year in our proposal. The other summaries of the bill are that we do include, notably, termination and of services protections. These were protections that were hard fought in the assisted living license bill, and it is our belief they are needed now more than ever. And again, regardless of what happens with assisted living license delay, we're asking that these termination of service protections, non-renewal of lease protections, apply now in 2020, because we're hearing all sorts of responses from, you want to go to the grocery store, you can't come back in. You went to the hospital, were COVID positive, you can't come back in. So we're really looking at 3 prongs to this idea of COVID protections and termination protections. One is you can't terminate without some coordinated move, some meetings, some information exchange, and without the right to appeal, which was the hardest fought right there, or a hard fought right there. That is intact, trying to slow and offer some voice to the appeal process. So that's one part of the whole transfer discharge piece. Then you come into COVID and you say, the governor has issued an executive order under 2014, 20-14, to say you cannot evict someone. So we have someone in an apartment building who is under a protection right now of no eviction. But yet we didn't have clarity in that executive order that that applied to assisted living as well, and independent housing as well. So part of this is to make clear and expand the protection that no eviction means of these facilities as well during the peacetime order. And then the third sort of transfer discharge part of the bill is the idea of cohorting. We are seeing some other states going to cohorting to a greater degree. It is very difficult to balance the rights and the risks and the transfer trauma potential. And so this is an ongoing conversation, but what we're seeing in other states is those who were sending COVID positive patients from hospitals to TCUs are no longer doing that in some states, because you're introducing COVID into the nursing home setting. So that was viewed, the cohorting has been tried in some other states. It is a proposal in our proposal, and to do that, you do have to then waive or get around some of the transfer discharge proposals for the purposes of cohorting for on a temporary basis to reduce the deaths in long-term care facilities. I will add that another main provision of Senate File 60 is to create a COVID infection task force with the idea of practitioners in particular, not epidemiologists or academia, but practitioners, geriatric physicians, for consumers, for family members, saying this is what we're seeing, an infectious control disease expert. Now those would inform anything like cohorting, and so those would convene immediately, and that task force would convene immediately and provide immediate input and advisory opinions to the Commissioner of Health. So we want to make sure that practitioners are getting in there and looking at it. We do increase some infection control processes. We had some language on infection control that simply did not come across from home care provider statutes to assisted living license statutes. We're adding that in, and we're expanding some of the provisions for housing with services infection control now. Along that end, we're asking for MDH to create a state plan, particularly for assisted livings and independent living settings. There's been a lot of focus on nursing homes, and rightly so, but the state-run and state-funded facilities, such as assisted living, have varied approaches and guidelines to what they're doing. So we're asking for a more specific guidance on those settings. One big thing is we have retaliation protections in the nursing home and the assisted living and the housing with services. The way it reads right now, the Commissioner of Health it would appear to have to determine if retaliation occurred. We're making clear that a cause of action, a civil cause of action, can exist, and that it is not dependent on the MDH's determination of retaliation to have that determination. Some hospice rights. This has been a significant conversation. In fact, as part of the task force and the plan, we're asking for greater transparency and guide training on the whole DNR, DNI post documentation, because we are hearing, as many of you would know, that there is often a significant pressure and or encouragement to complete those documents, and therefore sometimes there is then not care provided when a person becomes COVID positive or other condition. And so the Senate File 60 does add some additional rights under hospice. So connected to that similar conversation is hospice. If the facility says, why don't you go on hospice? You'll get more staff attention. You might get more pain medication. It's sort of presented as a helpful option. But yet it's important for people to understand that they could go off hospice and seek curative treatment if they wish. They could elect to go off hospice. They could also get curative treatment for conditions that were not the source of the election to hospice in the first place. A cancer patient who gets COVID could get COVID treatment, not cancer curative treatment perhaps, but COVID. So those were not in the Bill of Rights before, those sort of straightforward statements that you could go off hospice and you could seek curative treatment for other conditions. That is in a summary of the Senate File 60 provisions. We are, again, opposing licensure, so that those dates, closing delay of assisted living licensure, so those dates stay on track, and in fact, a couple of them are moved up, notably the discharge protections and the assisted living director license. So that's a lot of information, and I believe I'm certainly willing to answer any questions on that and receive any comments or feedback on that.
Susie, why don't we hold the questions to the end? We just have a couple more things here. A couple of facts I wanted to bring out to you. We've been having discussions with Commissioner Malcolm and the staff, and she has begun to talk to the advocate group. So that includes AARP, Legal Aid, Elder Justice, Alzheimer's, and Elder Voice. And a couple of, concerning things. MDH has had to redeploy 90% of their staff due to the pandemic. And this is a harsh reality. Oh, somebody found our slides going here. There you are. Thank you so much. So obviously with that kind of staff reduction in being redeployed, I shouldn't say reduction, but being redeployed to the pandemic, we do see a reduction in the investigations. They're taking the highest priority issues and working on those with the most serious impacts. I had asked the question today if there was any possibility of getting more funds so that they could staff up better and do some of this. And the news was not good, because they are actually expecting, because of the economic impacts of the pandemic, there are likely to be budget cuts instead of budget increases. So it's our belief that MDH has been working in isolation, and it felt to us as though they were being listening to the industry a lot and not as much. But so we welcome now that we do have that opportunity to begin to talk face to face and continue, a collaborative, productive relationship there. And we've already talked about the visitation issue. So Susie, if you're controlling the slides, if you could move on. Okay, I have changed a lot of those. Organizationally, here's what we're doing a lot more on the fundraising part of this. You've seen the wizard behind the curtain, Steve, who's been doing all of the Zoom meeting organization. He's also been tweeting away this afternoon, I see. So he's helping us a lot with broadening our social media outreach. We will be applying for more grants because it's clear that next year could be a very active year legislatively, so we really need to gear up. There are so many education challenges, especially now with the COVID pandemic issues. So we're going to try to get more resources to get the work that we know that needs to be done. As you can tell, we've begun a little more sophisticated newsletter, so that's happening. We're kicking off a series of webinars, and I did one last week in the central Minnesota area. I'll do another one in July. And that's based on the review I did of the OHFC investigations in the central Minnesota area. And we published that in March, I believe it was. And it was important to get that information out because these are facts that people should have in when they're looking at a facility or they're trying to decide where they may want to go or what's going on in their facilities. So we do provide that information, and there was pretty major newspaper coverage of that there. We're doing an ageism and racism webinar, and believe it or not, that theme had come up before all of the George Floyd issues. And the reason it was coming up is when you look at the impact of COVID, the two groups of people that are most impacted are people of color and the elderly. And so we're going to take a closer look at what's going on here. How do the two interrelate, if they do, and what are some of the things that we can do to address that? We also have another one, Know Your Rights, which Susie is going to do. And I think this is another particularly good time that we need to be focusing on all of that as well. Susie, thank you. Already talked about the commissioner, and we continue to do a lot of media outreach, so we'll continue that. Go on, Susie, if you would. The work isn't done, and let's now just open it up to questions, discussion, and Steve, do you want people to raise their hand figuratively, or how would you like to handle the Q&A part?
Yeah, there's a chat function at the bottom of the screen. So if you click that little chat window and say, I'd like to talk or not, we can unmute you. If we unmute everybody at the same time, the noise gets to be really hard to hear. So if you're interested in sharing something, if you could just click on the bottom of your screen for that little chat window and say, yes, I'd like to share something or ask a question, we can get you unmuted to do that. Or try and unmute your own microphone. That should actually work, but please do go back to mute after you've had your chance to share.
I can't believe this is a shy group. We'll give it a little bit more. I guess we answered every question you possibly could.
Well, while we're waiting, I'm going to jump in. My name is Steve Boland, and I've been helping out a little bit with some of this communications work, as Chris mentioned. I'd love to make a quick pitch for everybody to please consider thinking about sharing some of these messages with other people in your networks that you're hearing today. So a lot of people that don't know this information yet, that aren't following Elder Voice on Facebook or these other places. And it'd be great if more people were aware that even some of these things that are happening in the special session, if they got the word out. So please do think about sharing that out. When the meeting is done, we'll send you a copy of link to some of these slides to other people to help get more voices in this conversation. It could really help.
Okay, did we, Jillian, did you want to speak?
Are you addressing me that I'm raising my hand?
Yes, Jillian, is that?
No, my name is Laura Eisensee. And I was just wondering, I read that there was a roundtable at the White House today on senior issues with President Trump. And I was wondering if anybody followed that and what might have been the outcome on that. And I'll mute myself again then.
I personally didn't have time. So did anybody else who can share with us? A few heads shaking no, sorry, huh?
We'll have to stay tuned, I guess.
I get you have not heard anything more about it?
I just read that there was this roundtable on
Okay.
senior issues that I believe this morning at the White House. So I'll just have to follow up on that and see what might have happened or what might have been discussed there.
Okay. Just in our, in the morning, we got a 9:30 to 10:45 conversation with our legislators who are introducing our legislation. And that at 11:30 we had our discussion with Commissioner Malcolm. So we were a little preoccupied. Any others?
Chris, I have a question.
Great.
In regards to House File 99 and Senate File 60, what's the timetable on that?
Well, they both have been introduced, and I need to and are going to be. I think we're talking to both of our authors tomorrow to really talk through what is the strategy. I think it's going to be a very tough time because the Senate is only meeting for 1 week this week. And adjourning. So when and if they come back, we don't know. Obviously, we need those together. We didn't. We do not know, or we have not yet seen some other legislation, for instance, to delay the licensure or any immunity bill, or so bills are starting to percolate out. But sorry, it's harder than usual to predict what's going to be happening and how it'll happen. We'll keep you in the loop, though.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
One thing I will just reiterate, as you already know, the information and stories that you all share or become aware of are important foundations and bedrocks to the discussions that are happening very, very quickly. And so I appreciate and encourage you to continue to express those to Chris or Jean or the organization, just because they it's very important to show what is actually happening, and without those stories, we don't have as strong of a voice. So thank you for that, and keep doing that.
Thanks, Susie. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is the power of influence that we have going for us. And so we really need to know what's happening. Whether you want to talk to legislators or media, that's up to you. But please do so. It would be extremely helpful for us. Hey, Jean, do you want to chat a little bit?
I do. I wanted to remind everyone that on this World Elder Abuse Awareness Day that once again, the 35W bridge will be lit tonight from sundown till sunrise tomorrow. And if you're in the Minneapolis area, you might want to take a stroll. We thought about perhaps doing a group walk, but then COVID hit, and then we weren't quite sure whether there were still going to be restrictions and curfews. So maybe just knowing that the bridge is lit orange is good enough for this year, and we'll hope to continue it next year.
Great. Other questions or hot ideas? Well, you know where we are, and please feel free to reach out at any time. We will work on some of our technical smoothly next time, and the technical issues are probably user, they're my issue going on. So
Chris, I think we do have someone who might have a question.
Yeah, Jillian?
Okay.
Hello, I have a question. My name is Kathy Merkel.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for this wonderful presentation. My questions are in regard to the legislation that was proposed. Can you again tell me what the bill number was, et cetera? And I know you mentioned Senator Dibble, and there was another legislator involved.
Yeah, it's Senate File 60, and that Senator Dibble is the chief author, but we have several other authors, both parties represented, and in the House is Representative Ginny Keyboard, and I would expect we'd see some more sign on to that as well. The House File 99 was introduced today. Senate File 60 was introduced on Friday.
Perfect, thank you. And then as advocates, is there anything we can be doing to support your group?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And we need to find out more about what the next steps are going to be. And we will, by all means, reach out to you and give you suggestions. We'll try to make it as easy as possible. However, I am not a fan of scripting a letter that you send to your legislators. It really needs to be personal. You need to talk about your experience, how you feel about it. We'll give you some of the facts that you can, use as well. But thank you, Kathy, for asking, and we appreciate it. It makes all the difference in the world.
You're very welcome.
Okay, let's try to get you on. Can we unmute you, Jillian? Okay.
I'm pretty emotional, so I'm sorry, but
Not with us. You don't have to apologize, excuse me.
I just wonder where my the patient's Bill of Rights falls into this, and their right to have visitors and their right to have socialization.
Well, I know the Department of Health is addressing this and slowly loosening up the restrictions, but it is slow. Susie, is there more you would like to talk about the rights?
Jillian, you know, I'm sorry for the pain. It is definitely a right to visitors and a right to, it's the same arguments and perhaps even stronger arguments that we have as individual citizens. The right to associate, the right of movement, freedom of movement, you know, to go where we want. And those have been broken down in the general society as COVID has reopened. And we've said the risks are too high in the long-term care setting. That's why we're willing to tolerate a restriction on rights. Know that there are some countrywide who are saying, no, we're coming from, this is a violation. Regardless of risk, it's a violation. And then there's all in between. So you're right that there is a right to visit, and that is in the Healthcare Bill of Rights, it's in the Home Care Bill of Rights. And so it's a significant balancing. I will say the Ombudsman has been strong on this particular point of visitation. We are watching other states reopen on plans like all outdoor visits. You can't restrict outdoor visits. Things like if this county has low numbers, you should open up to a greater extent than a county that perhaps has outbreaks. We're seeing states all across the country do some different things. What we are planning to do is to support, that's one of the reasons the cohorting was proposed in this legislation, is because it hopefully reduces death rates, but it alleviates isolation. Because if we continue to tell an assisted living resident who does not have COVID to stay in your room, you're violating their right, or an independent living resident, stay in your room. You're violating their right, and it's one of these one-fits-all, one-size-fits-all approaches that we don't believe is acceptable any longer. And so we are asking for that, and we do plan to attend the conversation with MDH and be as informative and strong as we can about that. I would appreciate all of the feedback on what people are experiencing. Things from, if you do take your loved one to the doctor, they're going to have to be quarantined for 14 days. You know, things of that nature. It's just very important. So that's a short answer, or a long answer to a pretty straightforward right.
And Jillian, if you want more assistance, please just contact me, and I'll put you in touch with whomever I think can be of most help to you.
And I applied for a job at her facility just so I could see her. That's how desperate I am. And my goal and my family's goal is not to keep my mom alive for the next 10 years. If she catches COVID and dies next week, we will be okay with that. We will. But it's a quality of life issue for us. And to not be allowed any social visits absolutely kills us. And
Sorry, Jill.
a few weeks ago, my mom's eyeglasses broke, and her eyeglass clinic finally opened up. And my my mom was blind as a bat without her eyeglasses. So I picked them up and I got them fixed and I took them back to her. And when I brought them back to her, I peeked inside her window. And my mom has been there for 6 years. And they threatened to call the cops on me. And I have to say, that just killed me. That killed me.
I can tell you, Jillian, everybody on this call is hurting along with you. I would suggest, let's talk. Can I give you my phone number and then give me a call? Ann, are you ready?
I majored in criminal justice, for God's sakes. And a mile down from my mom's facility in Shakopee is a prison. And I worked there for a number of years as an officer. And I was just thinking, as they threatened to call the cops on me, I was like, oh my God, I never even smoked fucking pot. And I'm gonna end up in the prison that I worked there for years and years because I just wanted to see my mom. It tore me apart. It really did. And I will never forget that. And as long as I live. And the people that say in posts and Facebook and, well, you should just take your mom out of there. You should just have her live with you. It's like, screw you. My mom would fall in one day in all of my stairs. I have 2 kids. Yeah, I'm supposed to be a mom too. That are supposed to be my biggest priority. And it's like society says that your kids are supposed to be your priority, not your mom. But my mom is my priority too.
Jillian, we need to talk. My phone number, if you've got it's 952.
Hold on.
Okay.
Jillian, I can also give you Chris's phone number. I have it. I can walk down there.
I'm sorry.
No, I
know
feel
I'm a
so
bastard
bad.
kid.
Well, rightfully so. I'll come down after the call, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, let's give Jillian a moment to.
Okay, I
Jillian.
got my paper. 952.
Yeah, thank you for speaking, because this is what we all are working so hard for, and we're there, we're working, we'll do our best, okay? Anybody else?
We've all been there, Jillian. We've all had to. This is Patty. I'm on the board, and we have grieved and mourned the loss of our loved ones. Many of the people on this board, and we want to help you. We want to try to support and help you. It is devastating, especially. Can't imagine at this time being able to see my dad. And everyone can be great armchair quarterbacks and tell you they'd bring their loved one home, but truly not walked a mile in your shoes, and we have. So know that a lot of people on the call care about you and want to try to help. I'm glad you're on the call.
Yes.
I'm sorry for being a psycho.
No, no, you're going through hell right now, so not.
There's always got to be a crazy lady. That's me.
No, not to worry, not at all. Oh, anybody else? You have, where do we start and where do we finish, I guess, but, and certainly send emails to any of us, any of the board members. We're open books and we want to hear what's on your minds too. Is that it? Steve, do we have anybody else?
We are a little overtime for what we had told folks to expect. So I think if there's nobody that has something very urgent, and I don't see anybody else that sent a message that they have anything that they really want to share right now, maybe we should wrap up and we can certainly share the recording for people that weren't able to be here.
Very good. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's been great having, I much prefer an in-person meeting, but this will have to do for now. Until next time, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.